All right, I think we're live. You say hi?
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to another Maketastic Tools edition. Today, my name is James. I'm a programmer here at Waterloo Public Library. This here is my daughter, Grace. She's been in a few of my videos that I've done during the pandemic, and she's here to help me out with the Maketastic Tools today. We're going to talk a little bit about the safe and proper use of hand tools and how young kids can have some fun with them. We're here today in my messy workshop. Yeah, my apologies. It's the summer, it's the time projects happen, so it's a little bit messier than normal. So let's talk about safety. Here we go, safety. So before you start using any tools in your house, definitely would recommend you don't wear any jewelry. So I got my wedding band on. You should take that off. Yeah, taking off watches is a good idea. Any hair elastics that you may be keeping on your wrist. Earrings are usually okay, as long as they aren't like the giant dangly ones, but those haven't been popular since the 80s. So most kids aren't wearing things like that, but if they are, take them off. Hair back, you show them. So I got a nice ponytail back here, so that your hair is controlled and out of the way. And no loose clothing is another big one. Now, they say no loose clothing, but really it's like no baggy clothing, no things like hoodies, right? We have a great big hood hanging off your back. If you're leaning over a project, that hood can fall and get in the way or get caught in the way of a tool and things like that. That isn't good. Strings on hoodies as well, too. I just know hoodies are bad in general when you're working with tools. I wear them a lot, but you take them off when you start playing with stuff. So yeah, the other major thing you need to be concerned about is eye protection. So I have here today a few sets of goggles for us to wear so that we can protect our eyes. You only have 2 of them, and they're probably the most important sense that you have. So you gotta be extra careful with them. Now, depending on what you're doing, sometimes you may want hearing protection as well too. Sometimes no hearing protection is good. It's nice sometimes to hear what you're doing, and sounds the tools make can sometimes be a good way to give you a little bit of feedback, let you know whether or not you're doing a proper job. But with really loud stuff, high-pitched things, definitely wear some ear protection for that. We've got some earmuffs that we can wear. I think back there in the mess somewhere, there's also some of those ear plugs, those little foam pieces. Yeah, don't worry about that right now. But you can put those little foam plugs in your ears as well too. Now, earlier in the pandemic, I did a video about making birdhouses. There's a link right there to the birdhouse video. If you're interested in doing a really simple project, it's a great way to use some of the tools we're going to talk about today. The birdhouse video is a good place to start. All you need is a 4-foot piece of wood. There's cutting instructions and everything there if you want to learn how to make a birdhouse. But we're going to be talking about those tools that I used in making that birdhouse today. We also have the plans for that as well too listed on that site. Okay. There we go. There's a link to the plans. So let's play with some tools. The first tool we're going to be playing with today, what's this thing called?
A hammer.
A hammer. This is a hammer. What do we hammer a hammer with? What do we use a hammer with? Nails. So there are many different kinds of nails. There's also many different kinds of hammers. I have some on up in my workshop here. Mallets and ball peen hammers and things like that. I'm actually missing quite a few because again, it's summertime and project time, and tools are everywhere in my house. Nails. So when you're using nails, you always want to use the appropriate nail. And like I said, there's many different kinds of nails, but when you're a kid and you're working on kid projects, having a nice spiral nail like that is usually more than fine. When I say spiral nail, you can kind of see on there, there's a little twisty pattern built onto the nail. That helps it to grip into the wood when you nail it. Now, in terms of getting wood for your projects, there's all sorts of places. Pallets are a very popular one in our house. We will go out and we'll collect some pallets every once in a while. Companies will throw them out, leave them at the side of the road for people to use. You just grab the ones that are stamped HT. That means they're treated with just heat. You can find pallets that are treated with chemicals, and you don't want to use those ones. You want to use the ones that are treated with heat. That means they just bake them for a while, and they're safe to use. So we'll grab pallets. Sometimes if we have projects around the house, you know, you build a new deck or a new fence, there'll be lots of scraps of wood. Even neighbors building decks and fences, there'll be lots of scraps of wood, and you can ask them if you can have some of those scraps. Usually they're more than happy to let you take them away. It's easier than them having to haul them to the dump. So today we're going to be playing with some pallet wood. So we just have a bunch of scraps of pieces of wood that we've harvested from pallets, and we've used to make some projects. Some of these are leftover pieces. Some of these are pieces we just haven't used yet. We haven't found a use for yet. And they're great for kids like Grace here to use. So what you're going to do, what we're going to do is hammer some nails into some wood. So what we're going to do, I'm going to adjust the camera so you might not see my face, but you'll probably see Grace's face. No, maybe not. There we go. So we see more of the table here now. What we're going to do is we're just hammer this piece of wood into this piece of wood, right? We're going to take a nail. So we have a whole bunch of nails here. Now we want one. We want to pick a nail that is just long enough to fit within our project. Hold on, let's slide this back. There we go. We want a nail that fits in through the project, but not all the way through. So I'm going to hold this one up. Oh, this one's perfect right here. If you look at that, this nail, when it's flush with the top, is just barely short coming out the bottom. So we can expect this one not to pop out the bottom. We don't want the nail to pop out the bottom if we can help it. So we're going to just play around with these two pieces of wood, and we want to hammer one into the other. What we're going to do is we're going to use just two nails. We're going to hammer them in. So Grace is going to put on her safety glasses. Here we go. Either ones you want, whichever ones feel most comfortable and clean. They aren't covered in sawdust. There we go.
No, this is not going to fit.
No?
The elastic's too small.
We can adjust the strap as well too if it doesn't fit. There we go. Show them your goggles. You can lean down just a bit. There you go. Show them your face. So she's got some nice goggles on. They fit well. She seems comfortable with them. So what she's going to do, Grace is a righty. So when she hammers, she's going to use the hammer in her right hand, and she's going to hold.
This is heavy.
No, this is a framing nailer. So this is a good nail, but this is a good hammer for driving nails into wood very fast. It's heavy, so there's a lot of force from the hammerhead when you hit it down. Now, if you're a kid like Grace here and a hammer feels too heavy, you can't hold it up. By all means, choke up. All right, so move your hand up towards the head. This is the head of the hammer. Move your hand up towards the head of the hammer until you finally get to a point where you're comfortable with it. Okay, you can even use it, hold it up against your arm to help it swing a little bit. Might feel a little awkward, but sometimes it helps to take the weight off. All right. And what Grace is going to do, she's going to find a place where she's comfortable with the hammer. She's going to take her nail, she's going to put it on, and she's just going to tap it a little bit until it stands up on its own. All right, young lady?
Yep.
All right. So you can stop there for a moment. So she's tapped it in. It's standing up nice and straight. Okay. There might be a little bit of play. If your nail goes in a little crooked and it's not in too far, you can usually push it this way or that. You can also use the hammer sometimes and say it isn't perfectly straight. You can tap it straight as well too. Right? You get it to a point where you're happy with it. She hasn't popped through yet, which is good. So she can just double check and make sure that she's happy with where her wood is, and she can continue hammering. Now this is a point where you just whack away. You hit as hard as possible. So keep your fingers as far away as possible when you're doing this. Good stuff.
Made an imprint.
There we go. You can see she hammered it in nice and far. You can see it's even recessed a little bit, which is good. This is what you want when you're using hammers and nails. You want that nail to get pushed in so far it kind of pops under the surface just a teeny bit, which is great. She's made a few marks on the hammer. Oh, that's okay. Can I have the hammer? You can see on the head of this hammer, there is a waffle pattern on the head there. And you can see some of that waffle pattern got transferred over. That's okay. That's okay. Especially when you're doing construction. lots of wood inside your house. If you were to rip open the walls and look at the wood framing, there's lots of dents all over that wood, and that's fine. It doesn't affect the strength of the wood. Especially when you use soft wood like this, when it's like a pine wood, you can even wet this and it would make the dents kind of pop back out and look nice and smooth again. So if you're really worried about how it looks, you can just put a little water, rub a little water on there, and it'll make it look nice and smooth again. You think you can do that again? You can put another nail in. So right now, if just one nail, it holds the two pieces of wood together fairly well, but you can see it twists and turns still. So we need something to make it a little bit more stable, so that second nail in there will help out. So we'll get you centered again so that the camera sees you well. There you go. Let's try another nail. So she's going to do this all on her own now. Good stuff. Awesome, awesome. That was amazing. So there we go. We got 2 nails hammered in. Hold that project together. Now we're not making anything in particular. We're just playing with tools, demonstrating what you can do. So that was an excellent job hammering. So if you have access to hammer some nails and some wood, it's great practice just to put 2 pieces of wood together and see what you can do, right? Now, like I mentioned before, I do have a video of how to make a birdhouse. And bring that birdhouse over here. So we made a video with my youngest son making this birdhouse. And, sorry, we don't need that anymore. This birdhouse has been nailed together. So you can see 4 nails, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a fantastic application of using a hammer, is making your own birdhouse. Now,
This one doesn't have a pig in it.
no, we didn't do a pig on this birdhouse. Now, say you wanted to do this birdhouse, the other major thing you're going to have to do is saw things. Saw things. And that requires a different hand tool. And Grace is going to show you how to use that one today. We're going to find it.
It's not in here.
It's right here.
Oh, you mean that?
Yep. So this here is a handsaw. This is a normal handsaw. This is it. There we go. This is a handsaw that you would find in just about every workshop and every house. It's a very common tool. Okay. Nowadays, when we build houses and things like that, we use power tools. We use circular saws and jigsaws and things like that. But not that long ago, it was all done by hand. People cut wood by hand. So this was a common tool for just about everyone. It's still a very handy tool, especially when you have to do like 1 or 2 things. With our birdhouse project I mentioned, there's only 5 cuts. 5 cuts with this. So you'd only have to use the saw 5 times. And it's not too hard. So, and talk a little bit about safety for the saw first. When we are sawing, we want our wood, so say we're cutting this piece of wood, we want our wood as flat and stable as possible. Now, cutting here on a tabletop isn't ideal because we have the tabletop getting in the way. We want to be able to get underneath our piece of wood a little bit. We could use our little project here to help us out with that. We can use it as a place to help keep our wood up and off the ground to keep it nice and steady. Okay. Now, you want to keep your wood nice and steady so that it isn't twisting and turning around. So obviously, I could use my weight. You can use a grown-up to help you out. So if Grace was sawing, come on up here for a moment. Hang on to the saw. If Grace was sawing, just do a pretend, okay? You can see it wants to wiggle back and forth. She could get me to help out and hold it down for her so that she can saw. Can you saw back and forth real quick? Just gently, all right? Just for demonstration, right? The other thing we can do is we can use a clamp to help hold this down so it's a little bit easier. And for that, yeah, can you grab that one? You know how to release it? Yeah. Grace is just grabbing the clamp for me. Doesn't matter. Yeah, that's how you do it. Squeeze, pull it off, bring it over. Good work. So we can use a clamp. So this is a quick release clamp that I have. There's all sorts of clamps. This is a more expensive one. So like I said, you can use a grown-up to help hold the wood nice and still. Or in this case, we're going to use a quick release clamp For this one, it has this little button. You squeeze, it opens it up. I'm going to put it on the bottom of my workbench. Still going to use this little piece of wood that Grace nailed together to help hold our project in place. And you just squeeze this until it gets down onto our work surface. And you give a few more squeezes to help hold it nice and tight. There we go. Still might move just a little bit. That's pretty stable. Might need my help just to help hold it perfectly still. All right. So when sawing, we want to have a line drawn on here. It's just more of a guide. So I have back here a square and a pencil. And what we're going to do, what Grace is going to do, she's going to put the square just on the wood. So the square here, this is a square, has this flat surface that you put up against, and this is a ruler that you use to draw or measure with. So say we want to cut across, we want this flat surface here to go across, okay, let's show it. So the flat surface on this side goes up against the side of our project, flat surface here goes across the project, and we use it to draw our line. Can you hold that? Oh, you do it, I'm not helping. There we go. Always put a line when you cut. That way you have a guide. You know where you're cutting. You're not going to be cutting too short. You're not going to be cutting too long. Okay. So with our birdhouse project that I mentioned, there are 5 cuts to do. It's all measured in inches. I believe it's 5 inches, 4 or 5 inches, and a 7 and 11 inch piece of wood that you use. So for sawing, we have our wood down. It's nice and stable. With a line to guide us when we cut. Now, for our saw, I can show and get it up to the camera. There are little jagged teeth going all the way across the saw. They have basically the flip-flops from one side to the other. Okay, so there's one tooth kind of over on one side, and then one tooth kind of pointing to another side. That's kind of standard with saws. All right. Now, depending on the type of saw and how quickly it cuts, these teeth will be big or small. And there's also what's called teeth per inch, TPI. So sometimes in an inch space, there'll be more teeth. There'll be smaller teeth and more of them in the same amount of space. This is a pretty low TPI. This is a saw that's meant to cut quickly through big things. Now, that being said, for a grown-up like me, it's fairly easy to use a saw like this. I have my strength, I have my weight that I can use, my grown-up strength and my grown-up weight to push against this. A big saw like this may be a little bit harder for a younger person like Grace. She's not as big as me. She's not as strong as me, at least not yet, right? She's going to be stronger than me one day. So using a saw like this will be a little bit harder for her. So it might need a little bit of help. It has a nice handle here. You grip on it. So if you're righty, you grip on the saw with the right hand. And then you'll use your left hand to help hold yourself and steady the project. So you see, we've got the line here. What you normally do when you start off is you do what's called a draw stroke. So you pull towards yourself, and this will make a nice neat line on the wood, in the wood, okay? The draw stroke doesn't cut as much, okay? When you push, it cuts more. There's more friction, and it's a little bit harder, and it will dig a little bit deeper. But the draw stroke is more of a gentle stroke. It's a good way to get a nice straight line started, okay? So Grace here, going to take this on her right hand, left hand on her project, and she's going to start off with a nice draw stroke, pulling towards her as accurately on her line as possible. Easier said than done sometimes, right? There we go. So we got a bit of a start. So if you feel comfortable with that, keep sawing back and forth. There we go. And blow away some of our sawdust once in a while, make sure we're doing a good job. You okay?
It's hard.
I know. It's hard work, but it's worth it in the end. Remember, one hand. determined face. You're doing well. You're about a quarter to half of the way through. Can you pause for a moment to take a breather? You notice, too, Grace was adjusting her angle of attack. So you start off going straight across, but eventually Grace was going up like this because it was a little bit easier for her to dig in onto the wood. Okay. You want to finish off cutting? You want to finish cutting?
Sure.
All right.
Oh, that moves.
You're doing fantastic.
Can you switch the wood around?
No. You're going to use your right hand the whole time.
No, I know, but if you switch the wood around.
Oh, you want to flip it over?
So I can-
It's going to be a little bit hard. Grace asked, oh, you can pause again. Grace asked an excellent question. She wanted to flip the wood over. And I said, you want to do it this way? Neither one you should really do, I'm just saying. Because what will happen is if you were to flip it over this way, you're cutting from the bottom up now, you may not match up the lines when you're cutting the wood. You may have a little bit of a guide, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to cut straight across the other way. The other thing, if she twists it this way, she's going to have to use her other hand, her wrong hand, her left hand, her weaker hand. She's just going to get tired out even faster than using her right hand, her strong hand. Okay? But me talking gave her a little bit of a breather, so hopefully she can cut again. You ready? There you go, you're almost through. Woohoo! High five. Good job. So there we go. How did that feel?
It felt weird when it was dropped. I was expecting it to drop.
How does your hand feel?
And it feels like it's hurting.
Think it's hurting? A little tired, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah, just wiggle your fingers and get the blood flowing in there. But it's also one of those things, too, you get stronger the more you do it, right? So if you say, do that birdhouse project, and you have to do those 5 cuts for it, by the end, your arm will be very, very tired, but you will get a little stronger. So next time you do something like that, it'll be a little bit easier. Now, this is just one example of several saws. Now, if you want to do something a little bit, you want to use a saw that's a little bit easier for, say, someone a little bit younger than Grace. Grace is 11. So she's a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger than maybe some other kids. Maybe you have an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old. There are other saws you can try using that will be easier for the little guys to cut with, but it will definitely take longer. So this is a hack saw. It's an open saw with just a blade that you can change if it gets bent or broken or you start losing teeth. And if you compare it to the saw Grace just used, you can see the teeth are a lot smaller. Hold on. Try and get it so the camera can see them. You can see the teeth are a lot smaller compared to the saw that Grace just used. So this would make it easier for a little guy to use. But that being said, it's going to take a lot more work to cut through a piece of wood. He's going to have to saw for a lot longer. In a similar vein, there's also what's called a coping saw. This is another one that's used for all sorts of things. But this is another one that's also very kid-friendly, especially with projects for kids that use thinner pieces of wood or dowel. So you want to make a kite and use dowel. This is a good one for cutting through dowel. It has fairly aggressive teeth. They're fairly big, but they're still a lot smaller than a regular saw. So you get a much nicer cut. It's just a lot more work on thicker wood. This is a saw that you would use if you want to cut like a pattern. So say you had this little block of wood, and instead of cutting straight across, you wanted to cut, a winding pattern. Say you're making a puzzle or something like that. You would use this saw, and you go up and down really fast, and you can turn it as you're cutting along. And you could trace this line as you went over and cut a nice curly pattern. So we just played with a hammer. We just played with a saw. Another popular hand tool that kids like using in the workshop are screwdrivers. We're going to remove this clamp remove the clamp, you have to push on the release. There we go. Had a bit of a pop as it jumped off. You can use that release and slide it back together. Keep it out of the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some screws. So again, sources of screws, deck and fence projects are fantastic. I have a bin full of deck and fence screws left over from all sorts of projects that I've done. Things I've fixed and things I've built. Deck screws are good for little guys because they have the Robertson head, the square head on there. The Robertson head is fairly sturdy. It's really easy for kids to use. Deck and fence screws also have these nice, great big threads for cutting and gripping into the wood. Very easy. They're a lot easier to use than, say, a machine screw. A machine screw has much tighter, smaller, thinner threads, and it's a lot more twisting and turning to get a screw into a piece of wood like this. Into a piece of wood in a similar way. So what we're going to do, this is the piece of wood. This is one of the pieces of wood that Grace cut. This is her project that she nailed together. I think we'll just get her to screw. We're just going to get her to screw a screw into the piece of wood. So she's put her goggles on. We have here a Robertson screwdriver. This is a green one. It fits on this head. All you got to do is push the screw onto the wood where you want to screw it in. Hold on. Push the screw onto the wood where you want to screw it in. Hold it nice and still with your hand and give it some twists. You think you can try doing that? I know. Easier said than done, right? It's a little hard to get started at first. It's always a little hard to get started at first. We're going to try it this way, and we're going to talk a little bit about other methods. Yeah. There you go, young lady. So it took her a couple tries, but after a bit, she started getting it in. The thing you want to remember when you're screwing is you just want to keep pressure down on your screwdriver. That way, the tip of the screwdriver stays in the head of the screw, nice and even. If you don't have a Robertson, if you're using a Phillips or a Star screwdriver, you have to push a lot harder because those will like to slip out once in a while. There we go. Most of the way in. There we go.
And I'm done.
Perfect. So she managed to screw that in nice and neatly. Now it's only just one screw, so again, this project will move. In theory, you could probably, you could unscrew it right out of there. You can see where the screw fit right in. Whoop. I always get awkward. There we go. You can see where the screw went right in. We'll tighten it back up and on. Now, if you're having a hard time screwing into your wood, say it's a really thick piece of wood or a hard piece of wood, there's a couple of options you can do to help make it a little bit easier. One of which, you can make a bit of a pilot hole. You could say use a nail and a hammer, and we can make a little hole. Just get a little hole started, and we can wiggle that nail out, and then we have a bit of a hole started right there that our screw can fit in. There we go. You want to screw that one in? Or not, I'll do it. You'll do it? Okay.
The nails would fit.
Hopefully it won't hit. We'll be okay.
This is much easier.
There we go. A lot easier that way. So if your wood can take a nail, you can do that. Now, we will use screws when we want to be able to take apart a project sometimes. Right? Yeah. If you had a birdhouse and you want to make the top removable so that you can clean it between seasons, you could use a screw or a series of screws to screw the top of the birdhouse on. There we go. We have two of them in. Now, I know we described this program as being one where we're using hand tools, but we're going to show you just a couple power tools as well too. We have here a drill and a driver. So instead of doing this, making these holes by hand and screwing in by hand, you can also use power tools to do it. Now, in terms of a child using power tools, these ones are power tools that spin, right? So when I squeeze this, this rotates around. This is why we want no loose clothing, right? We don't want anything to get caught on this or this and get pulled in, okay, like a sleeve or something like that. You don't want to get your arm pulled into the drill and get stuck. It's also why we keep our hair back in ponytails. You don't want to be leaning over and drilling something and your hair gets twisted around it, all right? Now, what do we wear when we use tools?
Goggles.
Goggles. I got some too. So when you're doing a lot of screws, right, say you don't want to nail in a hole every time to get a pilot hole started, we can use a drill to drill a pilot hole, right? So this drill in it has a drill bit that is a little bit smaller than the size of the screw, so that the screw still has something to grip into once the hole is there. I'm going to get Grace to drill a hole with this piece of wood. All right, and what she's going to do, she's going to hold her project in one hand. She's going to get the drill lined up before she wants it to be, holding the drill with the other hand, and she's going to squeeze this trigger. When you squeeze the trigger gently, it goes slow. When you squeeze it hard, it goes fast. She's going to squeeze it however she feels fit, however she's most comfortable with, and she's going to drill down. Once she gets all the way down, right, to the base where the drill won't go in any further, she's going to keep squeezing and pull that drill bit back out. All right?
What's the nails? The nails.
Oh, hopefully we'll do it over a little bit, and hopefully you miss. Okay. You ready? You line it up. There you go. Squeeze gently when you're ready. And then pull it out. Oh, there you go. You want to keep squeezing when you pull. Sometimes it's a little counterintuitive and it feels awkward. But there she has a nice pilot hole. Now, she could screw that in by hand again. You want to screw that in by hand? No, you don't have to. But we're going to use now a very similar tool. This one's called a driver. So this one, the whole purpose of a driver is to drive in screws, right? So we want to make sure we have the right driver head on the top there. Hold on. And that's right here. And we swap them out. So hold on. This little collar here pulls forward, and then you can pop out. You want to put it in? There you go. So pull it forward and push it in. Pull the thing forward, the collar forward. There you go. It just went in. All right. So it's not coming out. So this has a Robertson head on there that will fit the screw on nicely. Sometimes if you're lucky, they'll stay on like that. Sometimes you can buy these. They have little magnets in them. They'll keep it on. Sometimes they'll just stay on its own. So you're going to lift and put it into your hole. There we go. Get it up nice and straight. You want to squeeze the trigger and push down at the same time. There you go. Woo! Squeeze the trigger and push, 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 push. There we go. There we go. Stop. So once it made that noise, that loud noise, I'm going to call it a farting noise. Once it makes that loud farting noise, that's when you want to stop. But she pushed on it and she got it in nice and quick. There's another way to put screws into your projects. All right. So in terms of finding things for your kids to play with, or if you are a kid watching this, like I said, look for neighbors who are doing construction projects, or maybe your parents are doing a construction project. Maybe they're doing a renovation in a bathroom or a basement. Maybe they're building a deck or a fence. There'll be scraps of wood left over, brand new wood, just cut-offs and things that they aren't useful to a grown-up. And it's a ton of fun for a kid to play with. Ask for them for that wood and play with it. The other option, I told you before, pallets are a great source of wood. We like to collect a bunch, take them apart, and then the kids have them available to make all sorts of projects over the course of the summer. Another thing I like to do for my little guys, when you buy parts and things, say you go to the hardware store and you replace a lamp, you replace a light in your ceiling or whatever, a lot of that stuff comes with hardware and you don't always need it. Or maybe when you take off the old lamp, there's hardware on it. So things like screws and nails and anchors and all sorts. I don't know what this is. Can't remember where it came from. nuts and bolts and things like that. What I do is I collect a bunch of this stuff and I put it in this great big bin here, and it's just free for the kids to play with. Sometimes I use it as well too. There's little bits and pieces in here, Lego, things that I need every once in a while. I'll be like, oh, hey, I need one of these. So having a bin of random screws and things like that for the kids to play with is a good thing to do, right? And gives them something to explore and create with. This is from electrical. This is to hold a wire on a stud on a wall. This one, oh, this is from a drop ceiling. So this is a screw that goes into the studs in the ceiling. So the studs that hold the floor in place. And then you use a wire here. You tie a wire through here and it hangs down to your drop ceiling. So those ceilings that have the styrofoam panels that you pop in, you use this to hold them up onto the ceiling.
Okay.
Anyways, all sorts of odds and ends that we have in here that the kids can play with and create. And there's been many an afternoon spent where they just use this bucket of random bits and pieces and some of the wood that we have available as well too to make all sorts of things. So yeah, so we're almost done. We have like 5 more minutes left of the program. That's a pulley. I just want to talk a little bit about first aid, because playing with tools and things, while you can do everything you can to be as safe as you can, there will be inevitably an accident or two here or there. Everyone hurts themselves sometimes. That's why it's called accidents. It's never on purpose. So 2 main ways to deal with accidents when using tools like this. Probably the more common one is you hit yourself, right? You use a hammer and you hit yourself. Use the screw. You're using the screwdriver to screw something in, and it kind of pops out of place, and you bang your hand on something. So the first thing you always want to do is use some ice, right? Use a hammer so you bang your thumb because you're holding your project a little bit too close to the nail, and you accidentally hammer your thumb. Get some ice on it, right? Keep that ice on it for a long time until it feels super, super cold. Then let it warm up a little bit and put ice on it again. You want to keep that swelling down so that whatever you hit with your hammer or whatever other tool you may have accidentally hit yourself with, the swelling goes down and it feels a little bit better. The other one you want to deal with are cuts. Cuts are very, very common when using with tools. So say using saws, right? They have teeth on it and you do everything you can to avoid it, but sometimes an accident happens. Maybe your hand slips, or maybe you didn't clamp your project in place tightly enough so it isn't totally safe. When you have a cut, you want to think red. Blood is red, so you want to think red. And that stands for rest, elevate, and I didn't put the D in, direct pressure. Put the D in. There we go. Rest, elevate, and direct pressure. So you see red, you see blood, you see red, you think red. Rest, elevate, direct pressure. So if you're bleeding, say you accidentally cut your hand with the saw, you're holding it too close, holding your hand too close to the piece of wood, and you accidentally get a little bit of a scrape or a cut across your hand. First thing you do is rest. Say find a calm place to go and sit down. Easy enough, right? Maybe get out of your workshop, go to the bathroom, go into the living room, go into the kitchen, dining room, wherever, someplace where you can sit and have a seat. Say you cut your hand, you want to get it up. You want to get it up above your heart so that it's a little bit harder for the blood to flow through. The whole reason of that is to try to minimize bleeding, to stop the bleeding, right? So you rest and you elevate to help slow down or stop the bleeding. And then finally, you put on some direct pressure onto that. So I cut my thumb, I sit down and get my thumb up, and I put some pressure on it. Even just squeezing your hand with your other hand is just fine. You can use a towel, you can use toilet paper, you can use Kleenex, you can use paper towels, whatever. You get something on there to help put on some direct pressure. That helps the blood to clot, to make a little scab, to seal up that cut and keep it from bleeding, okay? Once the bleeding has stopped, or at least slowed down significantly, that's when you can wash it. That's when you can put on bandages and things like that. No point in putting on a bandage if you have a lot of blood coming up, because it's going to soak the bandage and make it fall off, right? So you want to stop that bleeding first and then put on the Band-Aid, all right? In the case of something really, really bad, you might need some stitches. I've only ever seen that happen a couple times. I've had stitches before, but I don't think I've ever cut myself to the point where I've needed stitches. It's not super common, but it can happen. It can happen. Accidents do happen, even with the best of intentions and all the plans. And the most important thing is to remember to get back on that horse afterwards and try again and do better the next time. Okay? So that's it for us. I want to thank everyone for coming out to the Maketastic Tools edition. If you need a project like this suggested, go and use that Birdhouse video. I'll pull up that link again. Use that Birdhouse video as a good guide. It's a really simple birdhouse, like I said, 5 cuts for the wood. You need one 48-inch piece of wood, 5 cuts, bunch of nails, and then something to put a hole in it for the birds to go in and out. Watch that video. There's lots of really fun ideas. There's also links to other birdhouse projects that you can do as well too. It's a fantastic activity for little guys to do. Like I said, the other fantastic thing to do is just give them tools, give them nails and screws and hammers and screwdrivers and some wood and let them play around with it. Let them be creative and make their own thing. They'll be making forts before you know it. So that's it for me. That's it for Grace. You say goodbye?
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. And we'll see you at other library programs.